Bob Rae is Canada's ambassador to the United Nations. He joins us right now. Ambassador Rae, thank you for the time.
Thank you, Michael.
Listen, the Security Council essentially accomplished for the United States what the U.S. could not accomplish at the General Assembly, passing this resolution on Ukraine without blaming Russia for the war. Do you see this as a whitewashing of history?
Well, I certainly think it doesn't reflect the actual situation. It doesn't reflect the truth. And so you can have a resolution that says these things, we've got to get back to peace. But this peace without security, we all understand, we've all learned from history, doesn't mean anything. And so if you don't build responsibility for who started the conflict, how do we stop the conflict, you can't deal with any of these questions without dealing with the truth. And that's why Canada voted against. We indicated very clearly to the Americans that their strategy of trying to get the Ukrainians to withdraw their resolution so that it would all be neat and clean, that'd only be the resolution in front of the Security Council plus a similar one in front of the UN, that everybody would, in a kumbaya moment, somehow, agree this is where to go. We just said, no, nothing doing. If we're not going to ask the Ukrainians to withdraw their resolution, we've helped to draft the resolution. And you were at the table helping to draft the resolution until Friday. So we're not abandoning ship just because you're changing course. And that's the nature of where we are right now. The General Assembly resolution, I think, is a better reflection of the truth and the facts and the steps that need to be taken to get to a realistic peace agreement in Ukraine.
Well, and you've even gone one step further in that in social media. I saw that you posted a photograph of yourself along with President Zelensky, counter to the narrative of the United States saying that he's a terrible leader. You say he's been a hero and that Canada must continue to stand with Ukraine. Can you talk to us about why you wanted to post this and be so public about the support for Ukraine and President Zelensky?
Well, for the same reason that Prime Minister Trudeau went to Kyiv this weekend. And was with him and other European leaders throughout the day yesterday. Canada stands in solidarity with Ukraine, and we stand in solidarity with President Zelensky, who I consider to be one of the most effective and courageous leaders in the world today. And I don't think anybody in Canada thinks otherwise. I don't think politically people think otherwise. And I think the comments the president made were completely inappropriate.
Inappropriate, as you say. But, we can't help mark what happened last night at the Security Council because the United States voted with Russia for the first time in decades. And vis-a-vis Ukraine, Russia did violate international law. And now you have the United States putting a resolution that both Russia and it can support. What does that say about the respect with which the United States holds international law in this moment, in particular the articles of the UN Charter?
Well, let's just say it's not much good, is it? I mean, the change in attitude, I think, holds great risk for the security of the world and for the security of the United States. I do think I'm not underestimating the significance of the moment. I think it represents a huge challenge to international security because the notion that somehow the Russians and Mr. Putin can be trusted on the basis of their aggression against Ukraine, which goes back many, many years, and the threats that have been made against other countries in Europe, the notion that somehow we can just count on his goodwill strikes me as nonsensical, and also runs counter to everything we've learned in history about how aggressive dictators have to be dealt with. And I think that's something of which we all have to be very, very aware. This is a somber and difficult moment in the life and the history of the world. And I think we all have to understand and appreciate that. We've seen a turning away from principles and concepts and actions which have been at the center of global security since 1945. And now that we know where the Americans stand, the question is for all of us where we stand and how we proceed. And we've made it very clear. We stand with Ukraine. We believe the security of Ukraine is critical. And we believe it's going to take an incredible amount of additional effort on the part of us and on the part of Europeans and others to ensure that the security of Ukraine and the security of Eastern Europe and other parts of the world is free from these kinds of threats that have been dominating our landscape for the last 20 years.
Ambassador, I hear what you're saying right now, but, two European powers could have vetoed the U.S. resolution at the Security Council, but instead both the UK and France abstained from the vote. Are you concerned by that?
Well, I think every country had to make some difficult choices. I think it's very clear that the leadership of France and the United Kingdom stands strongly with Ukraine. I think that's clearly the case. I'm not going to comment on how they voted, but I am simply going to say that I think it's going to now be up to all of us to show by our actions, as well as by our votes, by what we do economically, what we do in defense terms, what we do politically. It's what we do that matters, and how we do it, that I think is really going to tell the story for the people of Ukraine and for the future of security in Europe.
As you say that, I have to ask the question, does Canada need to be concerned about precedent here? Russia invaded Ukraine, annexed parts of Ukraine, and as a superpower has been able to get this Security Council to pass a resolution that forgives them of their culpability in that. We now have the United States openly talking about annexing Canada. How concerned do Canadians need to be right now?
Well, I think the statements that the president has made about Canada are represent a serious challenge for us. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think the Prime Minister has said the same. I'm not saying anything new. I think we ourselves are going to have to do everything we can to withstand the economic pressures which the United States is threatened and saying they're going to bring to bear on us. I would repeat the points that have been made before. Those threats are illegal. The actual imposition of new tariffs is illegal. Canada is not without means to respond to that illegality and to those measures. And I know the Cabinet and the Government of Canada will be responding to them if and when they come. So we have to take this very, very seriously. I don't regard the Security Council vote yesterday as any kind of a precedent. I think we need to all recognize that we have failed to be able to stop the Russian aggression in the way that we should have been able to stop it. And I think it's not so much the resolutions that we should be worrying about. It's about the fact that we have not yet been able to deal with the excesses, the brutal excesses of the Russian aggression. And we have not been able to effectively respond to it as effectively as we continue to need to do. And that, I think, is something that we all need to take very, very seriously.
Ambassador Bob Ray, I always appreciate the time. Thank you for this.
Thank you.